and we are presenting to the Schulich School of Law at Dalhousie University. Um, I'm just going to try to forward the slides. There's three presenters today. My name's David Grabovac. I'm a prosecutor in the Kelowna Crown Council office. Trevor Seacott is also a prosecutor in the Kelowna Crown Council office. We're coming to you from the traditional territories today of the Okanagan or the Silks people. Megan Rame is an articled student in the Nanaimo Crown Council office, and she is coming to you from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, also known as the Sunamaliks, if I'm pronouncing that right. Additionally, we have from Kelowna, we have Lindsay McMorran. She's a training officer with the BC Prosecution Service, and what she's doing is just observing today, and she's also from the traditional territory of the Okanagan people. I've done a few of these presentations before, so they're fairly informal. We do have an agenda we'd like to follow, and I'm just going to advance to the next slide. So what we hope to go over today is the role of the BC Prosecution Service, the process of prosecutions, a day in the life of a Crown, the best parts of being a Crown, the articling experience. We're going to try to demonstrate to you and show it's a unique articling opportunity in British Columbia, the application process and questions. If anyone has any questions, we like to answer questions whenever they arise. And sometimes I don't. If I just start talking, if we just start talking, and you have a question, you just interrupt us and ask, or you can wait till the end. At this point, before we sort of dive right into the rest of the slides, we generally give a brief introduction or bio about ourselves. And I'll start off, and then we'll go to Megan and Trevor. So I've been a prosecutor for 26 years now at the BC Prosecution Service. Prior to that, I was in private practice for 3.5 years, and I completed a law degree at the University of Alberta and then a master's degree in law at Dalhousie University back in 1994. I prosecuted in both, we have 5 regions in the province, and we'll have a map showing that to you later, Northern British Columbia and also the Central Interior. And I've done prosecutions from tickets up to first-degree murder cases. So that's basically me. Megan, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, and then Trevor can do that.
Hi, I'm Megan Rame, and I've been with BC Prosecution Services for a whole 5 months now as the articling student in the Nanaimo office. I did my undergrad degree at McMaster University in Ontario. I graduated from the Schulich School of Law in 2023 and decided to article out here. While at the Schulich School of Law, I did the criminal justice specialization. And I did just want to bring to your attention, Dave, I'm not sure if everyone else is having this problem, but the slides aren't moving along as you're changing them. I'm having to change them manually. So I just wasn't sure if the students were also seeing the right slides.
Oh, really? Okay, Amy is.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's see.
I think from my understanding, for all of us to be able to be on the same slide, Amy has to change them because she's the labeled as the presenter, at least on my screen.
So why don't, Amy, do you want to just, that's good. So can I just get you to advance the slides when we need them advanced, please?
Not a problem. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Trevor Seacott, and I got my undergraduate degree in 2014 from the University of Victoria. I went to law school in 2017, graduated 2020 from the University of Manitoba, Robson Hall, and I practiced, I did defense work while I was articling and for a year in Winnipeg, and then joined the BC Prosecution Service in December of 2022. So I just had my second year anniversary just a couple months ago, and David Grabovac did nothing to celebrate it. Thanks, David. Yeah, since I've been here, I have been able to participate in a second-degree murder jury trial and had a number of roles, and it's been a great experience, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit more.
Amy, could you advance to, I think we should be on just, if we could advance to slide 3. And then go to slide 4, please.
Are we on the right slide?
Are
The
we?
role of role, can you
Yes.
see it? The role of the BC prosecution?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think can everyone see that? So the prosecutors in the province of British Columbia, we're provincial prosecutors. We prosecute all criminal code and provincial regulatory offenses. The typical things that you'd think of: driving offenses, frauds, murders, things like that. We're distinct from the federal prosecutors, so the PSC, and there's approximately 582 of us in the province. We're in 5 regions. We have 1 directorate, which is our criminal appeals and special prosecutions, or CASP, and then we have a headquarters. Next slide, please. The criminal justice process in British Columbia is unique amongst prosecution services across the country, because we're one of the few provinces that we do the charge assessment process, unlike most provinces where the police do the charge assessment and we then get the files. So in British Columbia, we have sort of 5 general areas in the process. The investigation process obviously is conducted by the police. Then the prosecutors get involved with the charge assessment process. So report to Crown Counsels, or RCCCs, are provided to us. We have a charge assessment standard of substantial likelihood of conviction in the public interest to proceed, and we're constantly reassessing that throughout the whole life of the charge. So at the charge assessment, through the trial, and then even on to sentencing and appeal. Obviously, there's the prosecution component of the process. We do that whether it's doing trials or sentencings. We go into sentencing, and then sometimes matters get appealed, and they can be appealed to either summary conviction appeals, the Supreme Court in British Columbia, the Court of Appeal, or the Supreme Court of Canada. Next slide, please. So what's it like to be a prosecutor, a day in the life, I guess? You're doing a number of things. So anything and everything you can be doing during a day. And some offices in the BC Prosecution Service are very, very specialized. So people are doing just one thing. Most offices, people are doing a little bit of everything. And that's what happens in Kelowna. So reviewing charge assessments or conducting charge assessments on files. Bail hearings or 525 hearings, we're doing those. Reviewing disclosure, deciding what to provide to defense, what's relevant, dealing with pretrial applications, preparing for trials. Next slide, please. Conducting legal research. I think you're all familiar with that. And then preparing for trials, whether it's doing direct examinations, openings and closings, dealing with pretrial applications, anticipating pretrial applications that come up. Finally, there's conducting trials and then conducting appeals, whether it's at, we can go back 1 slide, please. Conducting appeals, whether it's summary conviction, BC Court of Appeal, or Supreme Court of Canada. We go on next slide, please. Now, the best parts of being a Crown, and I think that most prosecution services can say this in the country, it's or anyone that practices criminal law. Criminal law is very interesting. It's almost never boring, and that's the one thing I found as practicing law. When I was a defense lawyer, I did that for 3.5 years before being a Crown. It was, you saw the other side of it, but criminal law is not. It's not like Wilson Estates, and I don't want to sort of be disrespectful to say Wilson Estates, but it's very interesting and it's always changing, and that's one of the nice things about criminal law, because it's never just when you think you know it, it changes. As a prosecutor, you get lots and lots of experience in court and doing litigation. We're public servants, and so there comes a lot of job satisfaction assisting the public and being a public servant. I go home after doing a day's work, and I find that I've quite happy with what I've done today, and a lot of my colleagues in the prosecution service, I think most, if not all, feel that way. One of the things working as a Crown here is there's so many opportunities to do so many different types of work, right from the initial appearances all the way up to doing appeals. We also have circuit courts, and we'll get to that in a couple of minutes, but we have a number of courts all over the province. So we have a prosecution support unit who helps out regular trial and frontline Crown, and they're part of the criminal appeals and special prosecution. We have independence, and by that I mean we have prosecutorial independence, and we have policies that we follow, and provided we follow the policies that we have to follow, our decisions are not being second guessed. And the approach we use is we do principled approaches to files. And when we do that, we have independence, and we've had that for a number of years. Next slide, please. We have no billable hours. That's one of the big things. And when I was in private practice, keeping track of billable hours, it wasn't ever fun. We have a good work-life balance. That's one of the things there. Sometimes you're really busy when you're in trial, but other times you're not as busy. There's lots of training opportunities and support. So we have a Crown Council conference once a year, usually in May. We have we have monthly through our learning, our LRLD department, Learning Resource Development Crown Department. We have training opportunities, monthly learning lunches, but we also have other webinars and things like that for training. Articling students will do in the fall, they'll do a 2 or 3 day training program. And then at our Crown Conference, there's a new Crown training school as well. So there's lots of training and support. Plus, we have students and lawyers that go off to the National Criminal Law Conference. And we have a lot of support and a lot of materials online that we can do on our own to learn. Now, one of the things I really like about the working for the BC Prosecution Service is we get prep time. And some of my colleagues in other provinces don't get that. So for every 3 days in provincial court, you get 2 days of prep time. And for every 1 day in Supreme Court, you get 1 day of prep time. So that's one of the nice things. What about articling students? Well, they'll be assigned to one of the 5 regions or a CASP. They may get opportunities to travel or go to circuit courts. Now, we have the civil side of the Attorney General's Legal Services Branch, and they have opportunities, or students might have opportunities to go do a secondment there for about a month. And we have students from Legal Services Branch of the Attorney General coming over to the BC Prosecution Service to do a rotation. Students will get training throughout their articles from a number of Crown. There's lots of mentorship. The one thing that Trevor and I were talking about this morning is that before we started off, in this office and in practically the whole province, I can call somebody up. If I have a question about something, I can go and talk to them about it. We don't reinvent the wheel here. And so there's experts in different types of law in different parts of the province. So I can phone somebody up and I can get an answer fairly quickly. Next slide, please. Now, we have some unique courts in British Columbia. We have Indigenous courts in the interior. We have an integrated court in the interior in Kelowna. The Indigenous court, I believe, is in Williams Lake and Kamloops. We have a downtown community court in Vancouver. Obviously, we have provincial courts, Supreme Courts, the British Columbia Court of Appeal, and the BC Review Board. And the Review Board deals with people that have fitness issues or they're not criminally responsible. So as an articling student, you can get the opportunity to do all of those get experience in those types of courts. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. If we can just go back just back to the slide one more time. And I can tell you right now, we have Indigenous court in Kamloops. So the 2 articling students we have now in Kelowna will be going up to Kamloops to take part in Indigenous court. And we have integrated court in Kelowna, and the articling student from Kamloops is going to be coming down to do integrated court here. So there's a switcheroo for a day, just a day trip between the offices. Next slide, please. So this, when I said a unique articling opportunity, What's set out in this map right here shows the 5 regions. We don't have headquarters in criminal appeals and special prosecutions. The green is northern British Columbia, and if it's hard to see, but wherever there's a star, that's where there's a Crown office. So in northern BC, Prince George is the big Crown office there. And when I was there, I spent a lot of time in a number of the offices that are shown in green. The interior where I am now, and Trevor and I are now, is the gray. Yellow is Vancouver Island, where Megan is, and she's about midway up the island. And Vancouver and the Fraser region, Fraser being south of the Fraser, Surrey, Port Coquitlam, that area, New Westminster, Abbotsford, Chilliwack. It's too hard to sort of see on the map, but it's a big area and there's opportunities in every region to article. If we go to the next slide, please. So it's a unique opportunity. Now we have both English and French duality in British Columbia, and it should be everywhere, which means that trials can be both in English and French, and we have English and French prosecutors. I will be mentioning, I'll mention it now, we are looking for one bilingual student that could to be an articling student. You get an opportunity to article in different regions of the province. You get an opportunity to assist with charge assessments, and that's unique. And there's a couple other provinces, I believe, that you might get an opportunity to do that on, but most provinces, the police do the charge assessments. We have an Indigenous justice framework in British Columbia, and there'll be an opportunity to apply that. If we can go to the next slide, please. We've set out here the Indigenous justice framework, and there's 3 components to it: education and training, policy and practice, and partnership and engagement. And we try to apply that framework to every case that we're dealing with. And we have had training, we have a lot of in-house training on the effects of residential school on the Indigenous population. And firsthand, when I was in northern British Columbia, we had a large number of Indigenous people who came through the court systems and had gone through the residential school system. So we're hoping with the Indigenous Justice Framework to make a change from the past and assist Indigenous people going forward. We can go to the next slide, please. So the application process is open right now. We're looking for students for the 26-27 articling year. And the process opens yesterday, or opened yesterday. It's open till March 14th for applications. Now, there are prerequisite courses that are required. Everyone, I think, takes criminal law in first year, but not everyone in the country at law schools takes evidence, and evidence is one of the courses that you do need to have to article with the BC Prosecution Service. We have both a written assessment and an oral interview, and then there's reference checks done. Now, in terms of how many students we take, we hire up to 15 students a year, up to 2 positions for students who identify as Indigenous, and 1 position for a bilingual articling student. And next slide, please. In terms of the process closes March 14th at 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Then there'll be invitations to written interviews. That will be the week of March 31st. Those that are given an invite for written interviews, they'll do the written interviews the week of April 7th. Following that, there'll be oral interviews, invitations sent out the week of April 21st. And then those selected for oral interviews will do their oral interviews between April 28th and May 16th. And then finally, reference checks will go between April 28th and May 16th. So after May 16th would be the time that the reference checks and offers would go between April 28th and May 16th. So everyone should know by May 16th if they've gone through the process, if they've been successful or not. And sometimes there could be a little bit of change in the reference check and offer time, but it's sort of, unfortunately, some of this is going through your law school exam time. So we apologize for that, but that's, practically speaking, it's the only time that we can get it done in the year. We can go to the next slide, please. The QR codes are for the job posting and applying for articles are included on the next slide. And Amy, will the students have access to this PowerPoint?
Yes, they will. It will be posted on my Schulich Law.
Okay. And the next slide sets out if we go to the next slide. The BC, the two websites, if you want to Google those, that will take you to exactly what those QR codes took you to, the applying for articles and then the job details. If we can go to the next slide, please. Now, tips to prepare for the whole process, the interview. Obviously, you need to review the basic criminal law and evidence concepts. You know, you want to know the big Supreme Court of Canada cases, Stinchcombe, the expert opinion cases, the bail cases, things like that. But you also want to familiarize yourself with publicly available BC prosecution materials. And there's a significant amount of material online. We're using the Crown Counsel Policy Manual daily. We're using I seem to use the BC Prosecution and Digital Justice Framework at least once a week, if not more. And there's other items that you can look at online. And that's something you want to familiarize yourself with, because when you're considering answering questions, whether it's on a written test or on an oral test, there's generally going to be a Crown Counsel policy part of it, or there might be a component from the Indigenous Justice Framework. So, it's things that are familiar, that they're online. It's readily available to the public, and it's something that we use every day in our jobs, and something that you need to use through the process, going through to be an articling student with the BC Prosecution Service. We can go to the next slide, please. Our contact information is on this slide, and this is the last slide. So our government emails are just our first and last name at gov.bc.ca. I don't think I mentioned this before, but I'm on the articling committee in Kelowna. I'm a Kelowna representative for the BC Prosecution Articling Committee. So if you have any questions, you can direct them to myself or Trevor or to Megan. And that's essentially the presentation. And I know we have a few students there, and if there's any questions, or if there's anything that Trevor or Megan wants to add that I've forgotten or neglected, if you want to emphasize something I haven't mentioned. Megan or Trevor?
I can start. So having articled, I were articled with a defense firm in Manitoba, and one of the biggest differences I noticed that I loved when I transferred from Manitoba doing defense work and came to the BC Prosecution Service in Kelowna was that you don't know anything when you start practicing, or at least I didn't. I shouldn't speak for anyone else, but I didn't know anything really. And when I was articling, it was you had to learn on the fly a lot. I felt I was thrown in the deep end quite a bit. And then when I came to a different province and started working for the Crown, I felt that way a little bit again. I was relearning a lot of the procedure and relearning some of the differences between Manitoba and British Columbia's practices. But having done so with the BC Prosecution Service, that support that you have from your colleagues and the resources available. We have training officers like Lindsay's here who are there to help you learn what you're doing. And the difference of my experience from doing my articles in Manitoba and trying to figure it out, having somewhat been thrown in the deep end without that support and that mentorship, which I was supposed to have. But I found that my defense firm, everyone was so busy that if I came to them for help, I really felt like I was robbing them of valuable time. But when I would ask for help with the BC Prosecution Service, I got it, and I had a lot of it available, both in going to my colleagues and seeking that help, and with what we have available in our on our website, with our database, with our legal assistants there to help us. And that was huge. It really took a lot of the challenge of just learning on your own, and that fear and anxiety and the challenge of getting around that learning curve, it really assisted getting there. And that for me was really enormous. And then it provides you the opportunity to, as David was talking about, all the different areas that we get to learn about and practice in, and the different experiences is really great. This job is never boring. I've never found it boring at all. And even when I do a drive while prohibited file, which might seem relatively straightforward, and I've done 1,000 of them, you never know which way they're going to go. You know, one that doesn't look unique on paper, when you get into court, it goes a completely different direction and you're on your toes the whole time, and it can be very exciting and very, very interesting no matter how it all unfolds. So it's a very interesting job. You have so much support with the BC Prosecution Service that it really does let you focus on what you want to do and what you got into this profession to do. And that for me, like I think this is one of the best jobs that someone can have, in my personal opinion. And yeah, I will happy to talk to anyone if they want to reach out, or if anyone has any questions after. But I can give my time to Megan now if she wants to talk about her experience.
Sure. So I'm currently articling with the BC Prosecution Services. I started last May, and I'll finish up this May. And what I can say from my time here so far is I really do want to emphasize the amount of support you get from the BCPS when you're an articling student. I have a lot of friends from law school working in defense firms, and we've talked, and it seems like sometimes they describe their job as being to assist the partner. Very much I feel here my job is to learn and to get that experience. One of the benefits of working with the Crown is you get assigned a principal, but I very much feel like everyone in my office is my principal, and you get to very much kind of tailor your experience to what you're interested in, because you get every criminal case that's coming through in the area passing through your office. So I can kind of go to one area or one charge one day and then go to do something else another day. And I can't overstate the benefit I've gotten from being able to observe so many different skilled lawyers be able to work and advocate. It really helps me, I've found, develop my own skills where I can kind of take bits and pieces from what I've learned from everyone else's style and establish my own style as an advocate and a lawyer eventually. And that has just been completely invaluable to me. I'm going to see if you guys can do this, but I wanted to drop a document in here, and this is a publicly available document from the, it's just the job profile for the articling students right now. And I wanted to say, I think one of the biggest things when I applied was I was a little confused exactly when writing my cover letter or going into the interviews, what exactly they wanted. And there's a section on this called behavioral competencies. And having just gone through this process, I can tell you that the behavioral competencies were very helpful, and they're what I tailored my application materials around. And it wasn't in a vague way where I just described the experience. It was very explicit, as in I demonstrated this behavioral competency here, and this is why. And I found that helped a lot when processing applications and making my application easy to understand when someone's reading so many of them. The last thing I wanted to leave you with is I contribute a lot of my the reason why I have this position to reaching out to a current articling student at the time, and she was very helpful to me. So I wanted to offer that to you guys as well. If any of you have any further questions about what it's like to be an articling student or about the application process in general, please do feel free to email me, and we can always see if there's a time to meet up and do virtually and do a call or something, because that was very, very helpful to me when I was applying. So I'd want to pass that along as well.
Thank you. Do any of the students have any questions for any of us? Now's your time to ask if you do, or you can email us later. Don't be shy. No one?
Oh, I'll enter into here.
Yep.
Here, let me just put a video on because I find it weird to ask a question when you don't see me.
Okay.
There you go. So in your day-to-day work, are you sitting at a computer the majority of the time, or is it a mixture of sitting at the computer, meeting different people, or like do you have meetings, the meetings in person, or are most of them on Zoom? Just because like all I have really, to be honest, is like Law and Order, and that's what I go by. So it would be nice to like actually hear uh, like how is the daily life happen? Like how are you guys how is your work life happening? Like is it mostly like in a room or is it outside a room? Is it in a coffee shop? Like
Okay, do we all want to try to take a chance to answer that question? I'll go first. So, for instance, for me today, I've got a number of homicide files on my plate. So I worked on one of those this morning. Um, I used my computer for that. I'm getting ready for a firearms file in a couple of weeks where I'm sitting at my desk on my computer, just reviewing the statements, getting ready for the direct examination of the witnesses and the cross-examination of the witnesses. Um, Tomorrow or the next day on a different file, I have to go to the police detachment with and see one of the police officers about a series of break-in enters and go over all the evidence to make sure we have all of the evidence. I'm going to we have a child um, a CYAC, I think it's called, where young children are who are interviewed or victims of crimes. They're interviewed there, so it's not done at the police station. So I have to go out there in the next few days and speak to a witness, a young child there. Some of the time I can say we're sitting at the computer doing research, but a lot of the time we're not doing that. And a lot of time, as I'm pretty senior here, I'm doing a lot of mentoring to other crowns, like looking up cases, sometimes going to court, watching what's going on. I was in court, supposed to be in court yesterday. I wasn't, but generally I'm in court 3 times a week, at least, maybe sometimes more appearances. I like to go into court. There's an opportunity to just do court by video, but I like to do in court for physical court. The only time we don't really have a choice is bail. We have bail court, and I helped out last week with that, and I was supposed to do that by video, but it turned out at the end I didn't have to do it, but I prepared for that. So a whole variety of things. It's not just looking at a computer. One of the opportunities, yesterday we had a freeman of the land in court. So they're organized pseudo-legal commercial arguments, OPCA, I think they're called. And so a number of people from the office went down to watch them. Now I was actually working on the PowerPoint for this, so I didn't go down to watch it, but you have a lot of opportunities. So it's not just sitting at a computer. And it's not like Law and Order where, you always have the aha moment in court where you ask a witness a question and either the case, you make or break the case. It's a lot more work than that, but it's not just sitting in front of a computer. I'll let Trevor and Megan then respond. That's a good question.
thank you.
Yeah, that is a good question. There are definitely days where you spend a lot of time staring at your computer. Unlike David Grabovac, he's the senior, he's our big guns in our office, and he handles the big stuff. And I am right on the other end of that, where I deal with a lot of high volume matters, but they're all relatively more straightforward. But I deal with a lot of them. And so one thing I like to do is take my files, and I literally will basically stalk defense lawyers around the courthouse. I will run around and find them when I see that they have appearances, and I will kind of ambush them outside of court and say, hey, let's talk about this file that we have coming up in a few days. And that's how I find that that's very effective in how I will meet with people. And a lot faster than doing things by email. So that's a preferred method of mine. I also do meet with defense lawyers, witnesses, police officers, and meet with them a lot in my office. Again, I prefer face-to-face meetings with people. I prefer that sort of interaction. You still spend a lot of time on the phone. And I spend probably 3 days a week, 2 days a week minimum in court. I'd say average 3 days a week, sometimes more than that, depending on what files I've decided to follow and what the schedule looks like. But um, yeah, there are days when you're just doing a lot of prep for your upcoming disposition list. So guilty pleas and sentencings, various applications. I am in bail court quite a bit. And again, that's a day of preparation where I'm mostly looking at my computer. And because bail court is done virtually in British Columbia, I will spend that day in court staring at my computer. Um, so yeah, that does happen, but there's also a lot where I am running around the courthouse and a lot where I am meeting with people, and so you get a good mix of that. Um, there's also times where, and I'm imagine Mr. Graveback does this for his serious files, where you're going down to the police station and talking with police officers there. You're going potentially to the crime scene and making sure you understand how everything looks. Because if you're looking at it through pictures or through surveillance footage, well, looking at a computer screen, you might not be getting the full picture. You might not understand exactly what you're seeing. So, yeah, you do. It's quite varied in that regard. This is not a job where you find all the time you're sitting at your desk, going through paperwork, looking at your computer. You do that for sure, but it's quite varied. And I think this is probably one of the jobs where you spend the most amount of time litigating and advocating in court. And for me, that's why I got into this. That's where I want to be. And so this is really helpful. And you get to do a lot of that.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Oh, no worry. In terms of what it actually looks like on day-to-day being an articling student, I think really I found that your day is what you make it. If especially at the beginning, they're not going to throw you into things you're uncomfortable with. They're not going to all of a sudden, fresh out of law school, give you a full caseload and a bunch of trials to handle. I found at the beginning of my articling, it was a lot more observing in court and taking notes on the testimony, which I still do to this day. It was a lot of doing more focused on research. I still do research, but it was a lot more of what I did. As you kind of get comfortable with it and as you kind of get your feet, wet, you can definitely reach out to people in the office. And now I act sort of like a level 1 crown, where at this point in my articling, I've conducted trials. I've talked to defense counsel and negotiated resolution offers. I've observed everything from intake court to my principal is the lawyer who handles the homicide files, so I observe him do some very serious files and help out with that. I've conducted witness interviews. I've talked to the police. I think in terms of what your day-to-day will look like, I really can't emphasize enough that it is what you'll make it, because most of the time the lawyers in the office are really busy. They have a lot of stuff going on, but I find if you send an email, even just generally out to people and say, hey, I'm looking for experience, there's stuff I want to do, there's more than enough people willing to take you under your wing who want that help. And from just to emphasize what Trevor was saying, based on conversations I've had with friends who are also articling, it does seem that for sure in this position, I get a ton of in-court time, a ton of actual advocacy experience.
No, that's great.
If I can just add one more thing, and I think that Trevor and Megan can agree with me on this. So a lot of times can be very fluid in our office, and you can be working on one thing, and then all of a sudden something happens, and somebody needs to go to court, like right now. And it can seem daunting at first, but you get used to it very quickly, and it's actually kind of exciting. It's part of the thing that makes the job really enjoyable, because you really don't know what's going to happen by the end of your day. You just don't know sometimes. It can be more stuff can come up, and it makes it really interesting. And one of my colleagues yesterday was just, he was dealing with another matter. And then I think I mentioned that OPCA litigant, the Freeman land case, just sort of, we just learned about it yesterday, and he had to very quickly get ready to go down to court to speak to it at 2:30. I've dealt with the guy before, so then I contacted. We have people at our headquarters that deal with these people. So I was sort of assisting. I contacted them. I contacted people at a legal services branch who I'm working with on another file with this OPCA litigant, and I helped with sort of one of my colleagues out. So it's you're doing something, and sometimes you have to stop. It's almost like a triage. Like it's kind of like it can be like a hospital where you might be putting a cast on, and then you might have to go, do legal CPR, if we can call it that, just to go and help out. And that's what makes it really I like it. It makes it not exciting, but it's really challenging. And you have a lot of job satisfaction at the end of the day. So I said that before, but that's, you're not going to just be sitting at a computer doing research. Did you have any more questions? Anyone else? Any of the other students have any questions? Don't be shy. We like to talk. I like
Why
to
we
talk.
do this.
Michael, do you have any more questions?
I have a bunch, but I
Well,
probably
ask.
leave it to an email.
Okay.
No, I can do it. I can do more.
Sure.
So when you are picking I guess you don't pick what region you want to do. You're just you're in a pool and then you're put where needed, I would assume.
So how that works is like it's a competition, so all the students are ranked, and then the top student gets their first choice. So each of the regions and criminal appeals and special prosecutions has students. So you get your choice as to where the office is where you want to go to. But you may, like, if Kelowna's gone and Vancouver's gone, you may have Prince George or Surrey or Victoria left. So it's not everybody can go to the same like the more popular offices, if there are any. But I spent a number of years, 8 years in Prince George, and I went there as a very new lawyer, and I did a murder case very quickly after I got there. The second week, I was in a criminal negligence causing death preliminary inquiry. In some of the outlying areas, you can get a lot of experience very quickly. And I know in the north, there's circuit courts. The student up in Prince George has gone up to Quadacha, which is Fort Ware, and Seke. On the map we had before, it's about 600 clicks north or kilometers north of Prince George. And I used to do that circuit, and it's a wonderful experience. So there's, every office is unique, and you can get a lot more experience in some of the rural areas because you're going to be out there. You're on the road. You're doing it. Like you could be calling the list. And that's not to say you might. It's just the way it is in the different areas. But to answer your question, it's people are ranked, and then they go to whoever ranks the top. They get the first choice of first pick of where they want to go.
If I could touch on that a little
sorry.
too. Sorry. How it worked when I applied in my cycle was because I'm in a similar position to you guys. I was at Dow at the time. So it was a move for me. And what I really appreciated was when I got my offer, I got basically they gave me a list of offices that were still accepting students that had positions. They gave me contacts within each office so I could call them and ask, what's it like living there? What's your office like? What kind of stuff do you handle? Things like that. And they gave me a few days. Like I didn't have to make a decision on the spot, so I could go because I wasn't living there. I could go and research the cities and contact people at the office, and I felt like I had the space to make an informed choice. It wasn't just, okay, you're in BC now from Halifax, and you had to pick on the spot.
One thing to keep in mind about that, if I can, is there are jobs that will open up elsewhere. So even if you hypothetically ended up in a region that wasn't the best fit for you, or you had an interest in moving somewhere else in the province, there will be availability at some point in a different region. And they will announce it across all of the BC Prosecution Service, and you can then potentially so this is a good way to potentially get your foot in the door and then go elsewhere when that becomes available.
And stating your preference, let's go say if you didn't have a preference and you just want to get your foot in the door and you said, put me where you want, like where do you need me? does that make your rank go higher, or is the rank just done objectively on like grades, extracurriculars, resume?
In so the whole process, um, you're ranked from sort of essentially from the very beginning. First, there's a screening, so a certain number of people, their resumes are screened, and then they get an invitation to the written assessment. And then after the written assessment, they those that make the grade, or there's a cutoff for that. Those that are over the cutoff get an invitation to an oral interview, and then that oral interview is assessed, and there's also reference checks. So the oral interview, you get a score for that, and then you get a score for your references, and it's that grade that determines your rankings. Most people sort of have an idea of where they want to go. If you know, I guess it's possible for somebody like if you're the top candidate to say just put me anywhere, but most people sort of have an idea of where they want to go, and there's different there's different things to different parts of the province. You're going to be doing different things. So if you go to Kamloops to article, there's a likelihood you're going to do circuit work. If you go and you're going to be doing Indigenous work. If you go to Kelowna, you're going to be doing. We don't have circuits here. We do have the on Thursdays, we have the integrated courts. So that's a different type of court. In Prince George, they have a lot of circuits. So you're going to be doing a lot of circuit work. If you go, say, to Surrey, an article, Surrey is in Region 3. And then if you're on a Supreme Court matter with a lawyer, you'd go to New Westminster to do the Supreme Court, because Surrey is only provincial court. And again, if you're in Vancouver, we have an office at 222 Main. If you article there, and you'd follow matters down to Robson Street, which is Supreme Court. On the island, I'm not sure if there's any circuits out in Nanaimo. Okay, but I don't think there are any circuits on the island other than or maybe there. I think all the offices have crowns in them, but depending on where you're going to go. And I'll say this, we've had, when people have finished their articles, we've had an articling student from Nanaimo come here. We've had an articling student from Victoria come here, to Kelowna, that is. We've had a legal services branch articling student come here. Now, they're doing different types of activities. One's involved now with criminal appeals and special prosecutions. One's on a big project. So we have a gang. We have gang. I guess gangs might be not the right word. We have large major cases. So if there's a gang shooting or something, a number of prosecutors go on to that. So they're on to that. So people move around quite a bit. And as Trevor said, there's constant change in the BC Prosecution Service with people moving around. People get appointed to the bench. People retire. So there's lots of opportunity right now for growth and moving around. It's like this very today with what's happening south of the border. I'm not sure if they're going and doing all sorts of big hirings for areas, because we don't know what's happening with the economy. But generally speaking, I think there was a competition just announced yesterday, and there'll probably be one the next few days and things like that. So so don't worry about if you're not sure where you want to go. Pick one of the big centers. The regional offices generally in the province for the regions are Prince George for the north, Kelowna for the interior, New Westminster for Region 3, Victoria for Region 1, and then Region 2 is Main Street, I believe. But there's also Nanaimo. Megan's there, and there's students in different places. I'm not sure. I kind of rambled on, but I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it answered it.
Are there any? We got a few more. Anything else? What do you know about British Columbia?
I'm from Vancouver.
Okay.
So I've always wanted to go back because I can't deal with the Halifax winter again.
Well, okay. So newsflash, Vancouver's getting hit with snow right now. They've got, I think 3 or 4 inches of snow, and it's like pure bedlam right there. But there we have a lot of, in my office here, we have 2 or 3 Dal grads. People, one guy from Newfoundland. He graduated from Dal in '94. He's here. A couple of I went to Dal to do my master's. We have one of my bosses. She is a Dal grad, and then she spent some times in the Maritimes, and then came back here to practice. So it's a good place to work, British Columbia. We have like really good good collegiality. And what I say to lots of students, don't reinvent the wheel. You're taught in law school to find answers to problems, and sometimes you do that by having to research the problem from like starting from scratch. Other times it's just knowing who to ask. And we have an unlimited amount of resources, both people and papers and things online, to assist us with that. And that's you're taught. Well, that's the thing in law school that you need to use here. It's not you don't want to have to reinvent the wheel always. You just need to be able to um, ask the right person who can answer the question. And
Yeah,
there's no such thing as plagiarism here. So, I'll be perfectly honest. When we're doing legal arguments, sometimes though somebody's already done a good legal argument, you'll cut and paste, and you'll use that, and you'll note it up and things like that. So you don't have to worry about. There's no what's that thing online where you check for plagiarism. You don't do that in Crown.
Turnitin, I
Oh,
think.
I think
yeah. If I can just quickly add to that,
Yeah.
like again, being relatively junior and getting to do a lot of things for the first time, I quickly learned I am never going to start from scratch. That the resources we have will give me a really good jumping off point, and the potentially overwhelming feeling of when I go, oh, okay, I've never dealt with a criminal harassment before. I'm doing criminal harassment. How do I prove this? What do I need? Like, I don't need to do that on my own. And you don't really have the time. Like it's quite discouraged in many ways. So I will go to someone to Mr. Grabvac or one of our other colleagues who have dealt with this before, and they go, oh, here you go. Here's a good starting point. And that will cover potentially as much as 70% of the groundwork that I need to do. And then I can sometimes just fill in the blanks to make it unique to my unique case. And that's huge. That's really huge. Where working with the team in that regard and with the resources we have is so helpful as you get around the learning curve and get started.
I know there's a question coming up, but if I can just add one quick thing to that. There's a lot of resources specifically for articling students too. I know Dave mentioned that there's an articling student conference where we went down to Vancouver for a few days, and we all got to know each other. They trained us. We went over basic, like how to run a criminal file, things like that. It was all super helpful. And within that, when you make those connections with the other articling students, because I think there's about 14 of us right now, it's really helpful between that and the resources the Crown even has online, where if there's like a silly question, I'm a little embarrassed to ask my principal about it, which I should never be because they're always very open. You can ask the other articling students, like, has anyone dealt with something like this? Or you can look up on our Crown internet if there's already sometimes there's already like breakdowns and checklists of how to handle certain charges.
We have a question, Nicholas.
Hey there.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation, first of all. I'm a 1L from Burnaby. I plan on going back, but so this is kind of off in the distance for me. But I was kind of wondering, you've answered it a bit already, but I was kind of wondering what kind of skills and experiences you've kind of taken from outside of law school into kind of your line of work and the career that maybe is not being taught like in school per se.
Confidence, I think, ability, and just being. So when I first started out I was a defense lawyer, and I was in Salmon Arm, and I did a lot of defense work for trucking companies. They drive through Highway 1 goes through Salmon Arm. So I used a lot of physics and math to confuse police officers in traffic court, to be perfectly honest with you, or raise reasonable doubt in traffic court. But any skill set that you have, really it never surprised, like I'm never shocked and surprised that we're dealing with an issue and somebody in the office knows something about that issue, whether they know learned it from their parents' business or their schooling or something like that. So, but confidence in being, at least for us, um, being comfortable going into court, thinking on your feet, and jumping into court at the last minute. I think those are skills that they may not teach in law school, and that's in an advocacy course. But I'll let Trevor and Megan add to that.
I'll just quickly, and somewhat anecdotally, I worked at a scrapyard for a long time to save up money for university. And when you work at a scrapyard, people will come in with stolen property that they want to sell. And now that I prosecute things where we get a lot of possession of stolen property, to wit, car parts or stolen wire, I know in those circumstances what's going on here. That's been a little bit helpful for some perspective. I would say that uh, sort of knowing yourself, it goes to the independence that we have in many ways, because we can be really flexible with our schedules and can do a lot of work primarily on our own as we handle our files. And so I know that I am a morning person. I am much more useful to the world uh, early in the morning. And that's when, so I'll get to the office at a grossly early hour when there's no one here and I have the printer all to myself and I have noticed no calls coming in. And that's where I can do some of my best work. So sort of, and that was what I learned about myself sort of in university, but more so in law school. And just knowing when I get my best work done, knowing how I can function best, managing the stress, managing the workload. And so that was something, the independence of our office. People aren't really regulating, oh, you got to be here at 8:30 and you're allowed to leave after 4:30. You can do a lot of work on your own time. And as long as you're ready for court, uh, you don't really get policed like that. So that's one thing, just knowing yourself, knowing how to manage the stress, knowing what works for you. This job can be really accommodating of that, and that can be really help you be successful.
I think the biggest change for me from law school to articling and now working in the field is I think it's easy when you're focusing and reading cases to kind of get desensitized to the fact that these are actual people. It's very different reading about something that happened to someone when you're looking for the legal context of it versus having someone come into your office who's been through something horrible and crying at your desk. And so I think just knowing how to deal with vulnerable people and having those, kind and compassionate qualities is very good to have beyond the legal education. And since I think you mentioned you're in 1L, something I would really recommend to you that I did was there's a lot of placement classes that Schulich offers. I did the criminal law placement class in my third year. And I know some of my colleagues and classmates got placed at defense firms. I was placed at the Dartmouth Crown's office. And that's what made me realize I wanted to be a Crown. Because they treated you very much like an articling student, where one girl in my cohort that year ran a prosecution. I was doing a lot of witness interviews and taking notes and observing trials. So it will very much give you a little taste of what it's like to be an articling student. But it's also for credit, so that's great.
If I can add one thing, Nicholas, so the BC Prosecution Service, we've had summer students in the past. We didn't have a summer student competition this year, but we may at some point in the future go back to having summer students, that between second and third year. But just keep your eyes peeled, like to look, because if the competition comes back up, they're generally they start in the fall for the if there's going to be a summer competition, or you can just email me next year or next fall, and I can tell you whether or not there's going to be one. There may not be one, but that's another an opportunity. When you're going to 2L, because that'd be during your 2L summer. So that's something just to think about. We don't have it this year. We did have summer students last year, and it was very positive, very successful. Are there any other questions? Anyone have any questions? We're kind of a little bit over. Amy, do we have to stop right now, or do we, if there's more questions?
No,
We could-
you're welcome to answer more questions if there is any more. Yep.
Anyone else, like, just feel free to ask questions. You got us here now. We will try to answer them as honestly and as candidly as we can. If there's anything that anyone has. Anything? Andrew, do you have any questions for us?
I think you all did a very fine job answering all the questions that might have arisen right now. But if I have any more, I'll get back to you via
Okay.
email. But thank you so
Okay.
much.
Terrific.
Thank you very much. Well, listen, we really appreciate you taking the time. If there's no questions, we really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our presentation today. When I, I'll leave you with this. When I was in law school, I was sort of thinking, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to be a sole practitioner? Do I want to be a prosecutor? And I didn't article back then. It was hard. You wouldn't have an opportunity to article with the Crown here. I articled in a private firm, and very quickly, I did a summer rotation in the Crown office in Kamloops. That's where I articled, and so I sort of got a taste of Crown work, and it really is a really good job. It's not doing securities work on Bay Street. It's not doing, big corporate commercial in Montreal or Vancouver, but it's a job where I find I've got the most job satisfaction. It's challenging, and some of the things that cause me stress in private practice, we don't have that here. And one of the courses that I took when I was in law school, I took a creditor's studies course. And when I was articling in private practice, I used that a lot because there was a thing that they never really told us about in law school, but a lot of times you have to do a lot of collections to get paid. So you do the legal work and your client doesn't want to pay you. And I got pretty good at doing collections. And, it's something that some people like to do, but I didn't, I'm glad we don't have to do that as a prosecutor. So there's a lot of advantages to doing this job. I'll leave you with that. And I'm not sure if Trevor or Megan have any final more remarks, but thank you very much again for listening to our presentation today. And if you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to reach out, because we'll try to answer the questions the best way we can. If we can't get you an answer, we'll find you an answer if we can. Okay, Trevor or Megan?
I think that was great, David. I reiterate, feel free to reach out. We're always happy to help and talk and share our experiences. So feel free to reach out if you do need anything, have any questions.
I think the only thing I'd like to add is that I think the BC Prosecution Services is really uniquely situated, having all the resources it does and working in the area of law that we work in with criminal law, that no matter where you want to end up, articling here will give you a lot of advocacy experience. It will give you a lot of skills in terms of it'll get you on your feet, negotiating and talking and making connections with other lawyers, dealing with difficult people or witnesses or things like that. So even if you're not sure where you want to end up, it's very uniquely situated to give you a lot of learning opportunities and really, really grow your skills. And once again, please do feel free to reach out if you have any more questions about articling in general or the application process. I'm more than happy to set up a video call and chat about that.
Thank you
Thank
again.
you so much.
And thank you, Amy. Oh, sorry. I cut
Sorry,
you off.
there was one more thing. The PDF you sent, Megan, I can't seem to access it apparently. Just a heads up.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that
I
at first.
don't know how to use computers, so that might be the problem. But if you reach out, I can always send you an email, but it is also publicly available. I literally just Googled BC Prosecution Services articling applications this morning, and you'll see there's a few different sites where the one I sent was just specifically about the job posting, because it talks a lot about behavioral competencies, and that's the things they look for when they're marking your resumes and your interviews and your answers.
Check out the QR codes in the PowerPoint. They should connect you to those.
We also have the QR codes posted on My Schulich Law with the job posting as well. So there's a lot of information there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Amy, for quarterbacking this, or
No
really
problem.
appreciate it. Thank
I'm
and
sorry
thank.
about the slides. They
that's
didn't go
okay.
as smoothly as they should have.
That's okay. I didn't know what I was doing. You were way better than I did. So
Not
thank
a
you again,
problem.
everyone.
I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was really informative. And just so everyone is aware, this is recorded, so it will be posted on My Schulich Law. So if you want to refer back to the video or the questions or anything, it'll be posted on there probably tomorrow. So it'll be for everyone to review that.
And what I'll say to Michael, Nicholas, and Andrew, if any of your friends or colleagues that didn't come today, if they have any questions, you've got our email addresses. Reach out to any of us. We will try to answer the questions. Michael and Nicholas, you're both BCers. Andrew, are you from BC or somewhere else?
No, I'm from Nova Scotia.
Oh, you got to come out to the West Coast. Nova Scotia is beautiful. BC is as beautiful.
Well, you know what? You're preaching to the